Alright, I want to talk a little more about the structure of data, how databases are designed, so forth. So let's talk more about tables and fields because there are some rules to understand about using them. So it's not just a matter of understanding what a table and a field is, but also some of the syntax rules, some of the conventions. Let's take a look at this and then we'll talk about the exact rules around this. So suppose we want a table to just describe some people, and the fields would be things that describe each person. Right? So we have a people table, and in there we have fields like name, height, birthday, social security number. So every person in the table should have those things that we could fill in these fields that describe that particular person. Right, so we got a people table with several fields in here. One quick thing about naming your tables, typically it should be a plural. If I call this table person, it sounds as if there's only one person in the table. So a different example, let's say we had houses, right? We want to keep track of information about houses. We wouldn't really want to call the table house. So a good rule is make your table name a plural word. So if you had employees, you would call it employees, not employee. But more importantly, naming the fields. It's really up to you as a database designer what you want to name your fields. So you could call this birthday, or you could spell out SSN, you could spell this out as Social Security or something like that. So these field names are kind of flexible and up to you as a database designer as to what to call them. So I called it hair color, birth date. Those don't necessarily, they aren't particular keywords, they're up to you as the database designer. So as long as the field name is descriptive, so that you kind of know what should go in that field, right? So SSN, we should probably know what should go in that field, but if it's not totally clear, we could change this field name to Social Security number. Other definite rule about naming fields, notice I do not have spaces in these names, and that's very important. So you do not want to name your field hair space color. You don't want any spaces in there because that's going to cause a lot of problems later when other people are trying to use this database or when you're trying to extract data out of it. So field names typically do not have spaces in them. So notice I've got sort of a mixed case here, and no spaces, just words kind of stuck together as the field names. That's an important rule to remember. So let's talk a little bit more about how you name fields and tables. This is another example of a widely used naming convention. So if you like this style, that's perfectly fine. That's one of the conventions out there in the industry, but this is another one you'll see. So instead of having uppercase, a lot of databases have all lowercase. So notice again, I've given this a plural name. I didn't call it computer, I called it computers because this might have hundreds of computers in this table. But notice here you've got all lowercase. So if you like this style better, you can use this style. And the other obvious thing you see here is instead of spaces, you can use underscores. So instead of using a mixed case and sticking the words together, if you don't like that, you can use all lowercase, and instead of spaces you can use the underscore there. So this is certainly widely used standard here. So we got things like hard drive space, and we've got underscores there, and typically when you do that style, everything is all lowercase. And again, going back to the names of the fields, instead of just type, you could have called this computer type. RAM amount, if you didn't want to spell that out, you might have rams underscore AMT. The naming is a little flexible, but in terms of whether to use the mixed case or the underscores. Both are fairly popular industry standards. So naming your tables and fields, those are just some of the rules that to keep in mind as you start creating tables and adding the fields in.